Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production, and our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we're having a bit of a lab on the MixPre. A lot of us use MixPres, so we're going to talk about them, talk about how we use them, and answer your questions. We might have a special guest here to help us along with that, so stay tuned for that. And we have a great audio crew here. Mickey and many of our other audio folks are here, so if you've got audio questions, this is also a good day to ask those. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
Our first one comes from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. He says, how does anyone catch a deep faker? Will we need zero tolerance policies or a little common sense? Do labels ever lie? And he's got a link there to an article about this.
Go ahead, John.
This is one of the arms races that's going on right now. DeepMind, within the last 2 months, has released some pretty sophisticated algorithms to authenticate imagery. And think about using the blockchain and or a certificate system, a PKI system for imagery moving forward. So it's going to be an arms battle moving forward.
Go, Jeff.
Yeah, and there's so much here. I mean, first of all, who is the you and we in terms of policy? YouTube, like the article link there, YouTube can have a policy that's different than, of course, law. There's fair use, there's parity and things like that in law. So that's very, very different and difficult there. But as the article points out, I mean, we're already way past the phase where many things are already indistinguishable. They are based in using real footage, so barring tokens and things that might identify digital watermarks. But that being said, also, where is the line? I mean, so much of what we use, maybe I have a lower third that was quote unquote AI generated, or maybe we're using things like Adobe Photoshop Fill to build out our set. If someone is with a recorded video using something like Descript to just correct a few little words, like you couldn't hear one word, so they use it to regenerate and correct one word. Where is the line of what's okay and what's not? It's a very tough problem that will not be solved anytime soon.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm with Jeff. I agree. I think we've crossed that line where from this point forward, for the rest of time, we're not going to be able to trust the information we see or hear. And I'm thinking that maybe at some point they're going to add what we might call a truthiness app to everything we see, and it's going to have a little meter that goes back and forth that determines how truthful is this image. Is it a real image? Is what they're saying real? And just a little thing that rolls back and forth. Stephen Colbert probably the first to use it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Alex, you've made a career out of doing effect shots. Do you think that if you're diligent, do you think that if you're critical, like really critical, do you think you can catch deep fakes just by really looking at it carefully?
No, I don't think So I don't think you can ever trust a single image. Ever.
Totally agree.
And I don't think you could have a year ago or 5 years ago or 100 years ago. The fact that we can look at these as entertaining, but they are all lies. And they lie in different ways. So like when we're on I've talked about this in the past. If I'm at a shoot and I am supposed to cover the protest from the point of view of the protesters, and 20 people show up, I'm going to take my camera and raise it up, and I'm going to shoot down on it. It's going to look like it's full. And if I'm I'm against the protesters, I widen my lens and I shoot the fact that show them that they're a little spot in a big park. That is, both of those are the truth, and both of those are lies. And the thing is that, and so the how we frame those things, and we have this thing like the image has to be real. It has never been real. And the thing is that we've been making this stuff up for a long time. We finally got to a point where someone actually admitted that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill JFK by himself. That was a conspiracy theory 20 years ago. And it just over this last week, they've just went, well, maybe he did.
Really?
Maybe he did.
I need to pay attention more to the news.
Yeah. So they're like, and people have been, like when it was a crazy conspiracy theory for a long time, that most people didn't believe.
Job if you believe that. Yeah,
you were a nut job. You were like, but that, and let's be clear, they knew that. We had people who knew that on the day it happened. And then they treated everybody like a nut job for 50 years. And so we have to remember that I only bring that up because there's many things that the reason conspiracy theories survive is because people lie. If they just told the truth, about what was happening and they decide people can't handle the truth, people don't want to show the truth, people don't want to ever. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories that actually are a product of nut jobs. But the reason that they survive is because the government and big press and big companies and just regular people, want to shade this all their direction or want to hide what actually happened, and then we can't believe anything. But we haven't been able to do that for a very long time, and so we just want to make sure that we're clear that this is not. There's nothing. I mean, most people didn't know that Roosevelt had a wheelchair. I mean, like the press protected that. So these are all lies. So the thing is that we need to understand that we've been lying for a long time, probably the history of the world. When they put in the stories in, they cut them into stone in Egypt, those were lies too. So I just want to make sure we're clear. Like, we have this thing, like suddenly everything changed. Nothing's changed. And you can't trust anything that you see, and you need to be looking for multiple points of reference. You triangulate this the same way you triangulate GPS, the same way you triangulate photogrammetry, the same way to find the truth. You need multiple non-agreeing points of view, that don't overlap 90% or 80%. You need them to overlap 30%, and you need many of them to overlap. Then you might have a better view of the truth. Chris.
Speaking of triangulation, on yesterday's show, when we were dissecting the Apple event, and we were looking at the interior photo image of that. It was like a craftsman style home, and you guys were talking about the ceiling, and look, the ceiling isn't right. And I just looked at it and I go, my brother has a ceiling that looks just like that in his craftsman house. This is not a set. It's absolutely real. And the very next shot, it's like, oh, I was wrong. I thought, I'm sitting here going, Alex, you're off your rocker. That is a real, I was wrong again. Digital photography is gonna be a thing someday.
But I actually will argue that we have more truth now because we have cell phones than we've ever had in the past. So the fact that we have body cams and cams on our motorcycle and in our cars and our cell phones, we see more of the truth than we ever saw before, when there was 3 networks that made a decision about what we were going to talk about, and they were all having drinks with the folks that they were reporting on and everything else. I think that we have more truth now, and again, AI is going to make it harder, to do that. But I think that's great. I think people not trusting it, going, well, I'd have to see it in a couple places before I believe it. Super useful. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I've been reading over the SAG-AFTRA letter of agreement that is going out for the vote, and a huge amount of that letter of agreement is concerning AI and what can be used, what can't be used, generative AI, whether it can be used to generate a character that is not derivative of an existing actor, and these. Yes, as long as it's not identifiable, and as long as that actor's stuff was not used. And of course, they said this only applies to. This does not apply to non-human actors, non-human characters. In other words, CGI-generated monsters, free to use, but even if they're voiced by somebody, human. Right. But that's just, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. You can use this scan, you can use for background actors, you can use this many, you can use, it's the details are just overwhelming, and to abide by them is going to be difficult once that film is made, to determine whether the rules were followed or not. Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. But I just think that I think everyone trying to figure out a way to validate images is going to be that's an arms race that no one's going to win. That's not. It's just going to keep on getting better, and it's going to get better faster than you can validate it. Go ahead, Chris.
By the way, it wasn't 50 years. It's been 60 years. I was
right. 60 years of, yeah. Next question.
I made a movie about that too.
You did make a movie about that. And, it turns out that they treated Oliver Stone like he was. I'll be honest. I treated Oliver Stone like he was crazy. I still do. But that movie wasn't as off as it sounds.
Well, I worked on one called Flashpoint that was about the conspiracy theory behind the scene too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Bill.
Jason Robert Shaw, Sarasota, Florida, is up next. Experiences using Axis carts from Innovative. I'm building a mobile cart for live virtual museum trips. 3 wheels better than 4 for tight spaces, stability, alternatives to Innovative?
Go ahead, Bill.
I've had 3 or 4 different production carts over time, and here are the things that I would think is important. Number one, the width of the cart. In Hollywood, there's a term doorway dolly. They were things designed to get through a door, and if you have something that's inside standard door things, which are usually 36 or 32 inches wide. In old houses, sometimes you go down to like 28 or something like that. But if you can get something that's inside a standard door, it becomes much more usable than if you expand its footprint out beyond that, because then you have to find alternative routes to move around inside of someplace. That's important. The larger the wheels you can do up to the point where they become so large. Like there are dollies that are fabulous. They have balloon tires, and if you're on sand or loose dirt or something like that, they're great, but they're terrible inside because those tires, again, move its profile outside of that. So there's just a lot of subtle things. So know what you're doing. Survey. If you're going to use it for museum trips and you know the museum, go in and do your measurements. Make sure that you know how high can you stack things. Are there doorways or other porticos that you're going to need to go through where you say, I can put my wireless antennas up to 6.5 feet, but I can't do them any higher than that because I'll get knocked into things. You have an option here to build one that's really good and works just for you. So pay attention to that.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you probably want to decide whether you want to go vertical or horizontal. I think vertical is a lot easier to get into tight spaces. You can rotate it around a lot easier. If you're in a tight space, you have to work off one side of the cart. You can swivel it a lot easier. Do not go for 3 wheels because if you have anything that's slightly top heavy, it will tip over. Nothing worse than hearing the crash of all that expensive equipment hitting the ground because, one caster was turned the wrong way when you tried to push it in a certain direction. Use larger wheels, like Bill says. There are a lot of vertical carts out there that have bicycle wheels on either side and then a pair of casters on the other side so that you can pivot them on the bicycle wheels. They can also go over thresholds a lot easier because in museums you may have thresholds that are, an inch high or, they'll have little curves up and curves down, but you hit one of those that has a little lip on it and you can tip the cart over, especially if it's a vertical cart and top heavy. So big wheels are better. They go over cables easier as well. So that's my vote. Build it into vertical and put your heavy stuff. If you are using a vertical cart, put drawers with all your heavy stuff and your batteries at the very bottom. That keeps it keeps it from being top heavy and gives you a little ballast to keep it from tipping over.
The one thing I find about museums is there actually isn't as many little lips as you'd think because of ADA. So the ADA keeps it. ADA is our friend. As people loading in, you love ADA buildings because they're just easy to. There's ramps and there's things and there's elevators.
Except for the idiot that came up with those little bumps at every entrance to a street.
Oh yeah, dunk, 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 dunk. You're like, my
casters just shakes all your equipment off the shelves every time you go over those, and there's no way to avoid them.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't mount a camera in a rig like this, like a cart rig like this, because it's very cumbersome to move a camera. When it's on a large cart, I'd probably have the camera either on handheld rig or a Steadicam or a gimbal even. Just to add to what Courtney was saying about the upright carts, some carts to maybe take a look at are PSC, Professional Sound Corp, makes what they call the Euro cart, as well as a smaller company called Blackbird Industries make what they call the Blackbird cart. I'll put a link in chat.
Good, Chris.
Several years ago, I was finished with a gig. I didn't want to leave my equipment rack in my van in the hotel parking lot. So I was like, I'm just going to take it up to my room. And as I'm pushing it through the lobby, they were like, oh, no, you can't bring that through here. And I looked at the woman behind the counter. I said, it's okay. These are hotel wheels. She goes, "Oh, okay, go ahead." Point being, you're in a nice building, bigger, softer wheels. I always go bigger when I have a choice, but definitely look into hotel wheels.
Yeah, exactly. I've had rough conversations with some people at the Four Seasons a couple times by not thinking about it. And then I got good at making sure I request the freight elevator. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just going to show an example of what Mickey's talking about, these sound carts. This isn't a PSC. This is called Pro Aim, but you can see it's rack-based width, so you can put rack equipment in it. And it has the large bicycle wheels and a pair of casters on the bottom. And flip out these wings, flip outs that give you more working surface, which is something you might need if you're going to stick a mixer or a switcher on there and you need to roll it into position and then work and then roll it through some doors.
Yeah, and if you want to browse some, there's a lot of them in Film Tools, filmtools.com. You can see a lot of different carts. They have lots of carts. And so you can take a look at those and kind of browse and think about what you want to do. I would not go with a three-wheeled bass. I would definitely go with something square because as Courtney was talking about, and I think Mickey was talking about as well, there's lots of shelves in there too. Like you can put things in there, like spending all that room underneath it. When I look at the Axis, all that room underneath it is wires and batteries and things that you don't have, that you're using up. There's just a bunch of open space. It may seem like it's lighter, but it's a bunch of open space that you now can't fill with goodies that you may need on set, like jam bars.
One other important thing
Yeah,
is locking wheels on the casters here, so that once you get it into position, you can lock it so it doesn't get knocked or roll away, or if you're on a slightly slanted surface, having it roll away from you is a problem.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, Courtney mentioned earlier about having batteries down below. I would also highly recommend, and I see this quite often with people who have just started building carts that, especially mobile carts that have to be battery operated, they power each individual device on its own battery. Invest in a battery distribution system so that you only have one large battery that you need to take care of, make sure it's charged instead of like 15 batteries that power things individually.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones, Madison, Indiana. Any opinions on studios now bypassing the union when discussing AI actors? This could result in studios strong-arming actors into accepting terms that enable them to utilize digital doubles as a condition of employment, close quote, so says HR.
Go ahead, and it's Hollywood Reporter, I think. Go ahead, Courtney.
Oh, good.
Well, I think in the, we haven't approved the contract yet, but it does require consent on some of that and negotiation, so that they do have to approach you and offer you to use your likeness. If you don't give consent, then they can't use your likeness for digital doubling. So
I think the concern is that they'll ask you if they can use your digital likeness, especially if you're an extra or someone smaller in the film. And if you say no, they just don't hire you. like we're not going to.
Well, they always have that capability. They can just not hire you to begin with. AI doesn't have anything to do with that.
Right. Yeah, I think that the challenge will be what always happens with a lot of these things, and I haven't read the contract, but you say no once as a smaller actor. And that word, you get on the list.
Well, you can be blacklisted today.
You can. I'm just saying that this is another thing that people will start blacklisting is that you'll get on you'll say no, like, oh, I'm going to stand up for my digital rights, and then the phone stops ringing. So that's going to be. I think that may not have been something that they cleaned up as well as they probably could have. I think that the actors would have done better at negotiating a position of you have to give them revenue for their digital rights, so it's not they're putting the actors in a leveraged position, and so that's the hard part. So we'll see if I'm sure that's where they got to after lots of back and forth. I'm sure
there's a lot of pushback right now on the AI segments of the proposal right now, so we'll see if it even makes it past the ratification.
Because that's the problem for the actors, is having to have the conversation is the challenge. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. My college students struggle navigating the internal file browsing system in Premiere Pro. It looks so different than the OS file system. Wouldn't it be easier if all programs just use the OS system instead of writing custom versions? Comments on that?
Good. Chris?
John, that's a really interesting comment, and I'm not going to disagree with you. However, I think what you want to do is you want to teach the students the benefits of adopting the internal file browsing system. For example, you could open up a timeline in Final Cut Pro. I don't know if you can do this in Premiere, and you can just drag stuff straight into the timeline from your Finder with impunity. Final Cut will go, oh, hey, that's not in the library, and it'll make a reference to it that won't be tagged, it won't be sorted, it won't be in a keyword, it'll just be there. It'll be in a big, massive bucket, but you could work that way and never use the file browser. But there's a lot of benefits to learning all the intricacies of what you do get from the file browser, at least in Final Cut, and I'm sure there's some advantages in Premiere as well. So I think the point is you want to find the reasons why there is an internal file browser, and then teach the students why they want to learn that.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what Chris mentioned. Some NLEs, such as Media Composer, allow you to set specific permissions for each volume. Some volumes you're allowed to read to or read from. Some volumes you're allowed to write to. Some have a mixture of both. Some just have record permissions. And if you use the built-in file browser in your NLE, it takes those into account so that you're not rendering out to a drive or a volume or a network share that is only supposed to be for raw footage storage. So that's where one of the reasons why you may want to use the built-in file browser.
Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I'm a child of Bryce, which had the most anti-Apple filing system on the planet, but it was a great program. There's a lot of things you can do in Premiere, John, that will work in the Apple way. The drag and drop that Chris mentioned does work inside of Premiere. The media browser has the same hierarchical file structure. So you can work around it. It's sometimes you just have to give a little nudge in the right direction.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And I'll just mention real quick, I don't love this, but remember, especially a company like Adobe, they want cross-platform continuity. So they want someone to be able to go from a Mac to Windows and vice versa and have the same program, not have it be completely different.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Brian. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, can a Mac Mini with 8 gigabytes of RAM run Keynote and live stream with OBS?
Go ahead, Mickey.
For the most part, it should be fine, though. And yes, you should be able to do that, though. Reliability of OBS on Mac OS has mixed. People have had mixed experience for that. Chris Fenwick can tell us about that.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I've got to reiterate that. Don't use OBS on Mac if you can help it.
Go ahead, Chris.
But if you're going to, what I would do is I would run Keynote in a window, okay? So you can run Keynote in a window and not take over the screen. You capture that window in the OBS, and then you can pump it out. Now, you're using OBS to actually, if you're using OBS for actually doing the encoding, I don't know. I don't use that. But I do pump it into, so I have done this exactly with this computer, 8 gig Mac Mini M1, Keynote in a window, OBS to drive it, and Zoom to pump it into a Zoom meeting. I've done it all day long, no problem. Again, don't do a lot with OBS on a Mac. Don't ask a lot out of it. It'll probably be fine. Be careful.
Yeah, I would test it heavily. It'll definitely run Keynote. It'll definitely run OBS. I wouldn't try to do both at the same time if it mattered. So if you're doing something little in your own little streams, I think that doing having Keynote and OBS, and it has some of it is power and the other is just workflow. Is that you're now having to deal with, you have both applications that you have to control on the same computer with interfaces, and you only have 2 monitors, and there's a lot of that's a complicated system. So from a workflow perspective, I think that, from a CPU perspective, I think the M1 can probably do both of those. From a workflow perspective, I would definitely feed the Mac Mini from one Mac Mini to another in a variety of different ways, into an OBS that was streaming. That way I had a separate control over my OBS and my thing. And I think that there's just a lot of, it's not a power issue. It's really a workflow issue. You're going to have a better stream, and you're going to be able to fix problems. Everything works on a sunny day. It's when it rains that you have to, like, you want to know that you had a tent, or at least an umbrella, or at least a thick jacket. So the thing is what you're setting up is something that only runs on a sunny day, and that's the thing you want to look at. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
And last thing I want to mention, and Alex, you could do it on a single monitor if you do the keynote in a window, like I mentioned.
You can.
If you do this, if you're going to go down this potentially toe-stubbing path, set up a Stream Deck with just 2 buttons, forward and next, to advance the slides, because you would have to make sure that your mouse has how do you say it, that the keynote is the forward app, whatever, for the keyboard to advance it. Yeah, little tiny Stream Deck like that. There you go. Exactly what.
Yeah, that's exactly what I use this for. This is on a computer that I actually don't have.
Do?
The green button, I don't remember. I had there's some reason I put it. I was testing something and I put it in there.
This might be why you can't make OBS work on a Mac. You don't even remember what your buttons do. No, but definitely have a little Stream Deck to do forward and advance, because it will work regardless of which app has priority or is forward, or whatever, however you say that.
Yeah, and this little, I got that Stream Deck specifically to just run forward and back. It runs on a computer that I don't. When I'm doing a presentation, once I've got it all set up, I have a KVM to that, but once I have it all set up, I don't want a KVM into it every time I talk to it. I just want to go to the next slide. And so as a result, I set that up, and so that I can just keep on pushing that as needed. And I didn't need any more than, obviously, as you can see, 6 buttons was more than I needed. I'm experimenting. I haven't gotten this to really work yet, but I'm experimenting with this thing. There's just the only 3 buttons that I actually need. But anyway, it's a long story. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana is next. Anyone tried the Pocket 3, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, as a webcam, and how does it stack compared to the Insta360?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I got to play around with one 2 or 3 weeks ago. It compared to the Insta360 link, I'd say that it's a slightly noticeable improvement, I guess, because of the larger sensor size compared to the Insta360. A few quirks. When you are using it as a USB webcam using the UVC output, it no longer connects to the DJI app, so you cannot control it from the app when you're using it as a webcam.
Can you control it from anything?
From the hardware itself.
The joystick
at the moment,
front
there is no. Yeah, the joystick. There is no software control for it that runs on a computer at the moment. It's only the app, which is disabled when using it as a webcam. Another thing to keep in mind is that UVC output is 1080p only, not the UHD. The internal recording is UHD, but not the UVC out.
Okay, I'm glad you got to test it, because that saves me a lot of time and money. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, just as a general one, Andy Toe, the young YouTube creator who was one of the special guests at the Creative Summit, had one there and let me play around with it for a little bit. And I have to say, the quality that was coming out of it and the ease of use for such a small unit, and I just got to drive it with the physical controls on it, but it seemed very, very well designed and well built. So if I had to go do a lot of outdoor things like that, and particularly if I was a YouTube vlogger type, I would seriously take a look at that.
Yeah, I guess the question for me with that specifically is, if I have an iPhone, I mean, again, there's lots of people that'll buy this that don't have an iPhone 15. But if I have an iPhone 15 Pro and I'm able to record log, Apple log in ProRes, I just feel like I would much rather have the Osmo phone stabilizer, and use the phone. I think that the phone sensor and the subsystem supporting it is better than the Pocket 360, or not the Pocket 360, but the Pocket 3. I mean, I don't know, Mickey, would you, if you had an iPhone 15 Pro, would you use the phone with an Osmo, stabilizer, or would you use the Pocket 3?
I guess if it was for just like personal videos for personal use, I'd probably go with the iPhone. But if this was for work, I would not use a personal phone to record work related footage.
Well,
so
but if you had
separate.
But if you needed to get really good footage, the Pocket 3 is not capable of capturing the same level of footage that the phone is. So I don't know whether it could be a work phone that is an iPhone 15, but I'm just saying, compared to an iPhone 15, if you had one, like for me, I feel like I'm now like all the cameras. I think that, and this is where I think Apple's going with this. Is for me, every camera that isn't like mini film camera can record log, ProRes or a better, and it doesn't have to be ProRes, but I'm just saying that level of capture has been for me invalidated. Like if it doesn't have a super, if it doesn't like I don't like that. This camera is going to capture what I need for that now in a way that I didn't think about before. Yeah, because I still thought, oh, it's phone footage, and we've used phone footage in production for a long time, for a decade, but only in like little bits. And now you feel like you can. I'm gonna do some captures soon on a green screen just to see what that looks like. Like to see, like, is this can I actually key this footage? Is the next thing. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
The thing that's impressed me about it is that, first of all, the form factor is just so slim. I mean, in real life, this is a pretty tiny thing. And that rotatable screen was very clear, very bright. We were able to use it in daylight pretty easily. It's a fully gimbaled system. And plus, if you take that base off, you've got a quarter 20 down there. So for the kind of things I do with event coverage, to be able to get it on a monopod or even just one of those pull out real quick, because it's very light, and toss it up above a crowd, swing it around upside down and put it on the ground for the doggy cam kind of shots. It was really, I just was fascinated by it. If I had an extra $700 and I was going to go shoot a ton of things, I might try it out for that, because it looked like fun.
And I have to admit, I bought the first Pocket, and I just found that I just never used it. Like I used it for the first. I was in Cambodia, and I used it for a bunch of little things, and I shot a bunch of things with it, and I was really excited about it. And then it just sat in a desk, like it was like it didn't really. And I used my phone all the time. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
It's interesting. My mind went to the same place there, Bill, with regards to iPhone with a gimbal versus the Osmo Pocket 3, and yeah, like it's a workflow thing. Do you want something you can just whip out of the bag and shoot immediately, or are you okay with having to pull it out, mount the phone in it, and do some very, very quick balancing, but still balancing that you have to do? It's a choice. Like, do you need to be able to roll very quickly?
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Hey, asking this question again, how can I use graphics providers like www.overlay.uno to give my kit, which is an ATEM Extreme ISO, Raspberry Pi, and a mini PC with 2 HDMI outs, overlays without confusing key and fill options, and also having to get a Decklink card?
Good, John.
You would be able to take that into OBS. And then you would be able to put a green screen or do a Luma key with the ATEM and then pop that out. You can, if you right click on the video, you can choose projector and then use one of your HDMI outputs from the machine and capture that and do a key from there. We did that for a couple days before we set up Casper CG when we moved the system from site to site.
Hey, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what John said. And just to add to that, if you do rely on Luma key instead, your graphics need to be pushed up a little higher in terms of the lift, so that your absolute blacks on the graphics themselves aren't at 0. People have recommended 7% black lift, so that you're able to select the pure black as what you key out, and then the rest of the shadows are still kept in the key.
Yeah, 7.5 has been something we've used since the 90s. I tend to be a little bit, I like to have a little bit softer edge, so I'll go for 10 or even 15%. I don't find anybody notices. Like, if you don't change anything, you don't show them any other pure blacks, it's going to look just fine. It's still going to look black at 15%. So I use 15% on those. Luma key is going to look better in many options, because green is going through. If you're keying green, you're doing a 422, so you're now dealing with the color resolution. So when you see 422, 4 is the Luma information, which is, if you're doing a Luma key, is all of the frame, as opposed to if you're doing a green screen or any kind of color screen, you're getting 422. Where you'll see that is anything that is at an angle or with a curved edge or any unusual edge there, you're going to see a little bit of aliasing along those edges because of that, and that's what you want to try to avoid with the green. Now, if you use largely or completely square lower thirds or graphics, you won't see as much of that. So then you can get away with it. It is a little easier in doing You can do semi-transparency with Luma keys, so you can have gradients and so on and so forth. But it is easier to do with green screens to make that actually work. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just one thing to add: if ever you want to experiment with using a key and fill, two feeds, a key fill and a key feed and a fill feed, with HDMI-based systems, the sync between the two feeds isn't always reliable, even if it's coming from the same source going to the same switcher. So I would shy away from that unless you go through an SDI system that is gen locked.
Absolutely, you can't do it with HDMI. You have to do it with an SDI. You can get away without them being gen locked if there's two SDI outputs. Those SDI outputs will go into the switcher, and they'll be fine. But the HDMI will not. Next question.
Next question is coming to us from Daniel Partridge in Rochester, Minnesota. Is there a simple Zoom software switcher looking for something that can do a clean 1 to 4 heads on screen and then out to an HDMI switcher? vMix and Mimo Live are overkill. Zoom ISO is close, but can't combine people to one output.
Go, Jeff.
Yeah, so I'll show you if this works right here. There's well, I was going to recommend, first of all, one of the Streamlabs, but of course now it's not showing my desktop. So 2 things I would recommend, which is first Cinemaker. Check out Cinemaker. They have a lot of tools to do exactly what you're talking about. And then the other one is Streamlabs. So there's Streamlabs Desktop, and it's, they're certainly known and associated with gamers, live streaming, but the combination of a company using their implementation of OBS, I'm talking through it and have been, actually not audio, but my video has been going through, always goes through Streamlabs for everything I do in Zoom and anything else, and it lets me do all the picture-in-picture and combine things. So I have never had it crash or any stability problems, and the tools are so simple and quick to build out scenes in any configuration you want with multiple people, multiple windows of all different objects. It's incredibly easy to get something like that up and running very quickly, and they also have their own version of a control app that you can run on a phone, iPad, that is their version basically of a Stream Deck, so you can do all that switching very fast and very easily.
Good, Mitchell.
Daniel, if you don't get satisfaction with a software switcher, take a look, just for the heck of it, the Roland V1. It's available in HDMI and SDI. It's about $600, and it'll do everything you're looking for, maybe a little bit better than an ATEM.
And Ecamm Live is a good one to take a look at there. In the price range, if you've decided that Mimo Live or vMix is too much, then Ecamm Live. On the PC, I would say OBS will do exactly what you want, and then Ecamm Live is a less expensive version that you might want to look at there. A quick reminder that, of course, you can ask questions through the first hour. And for the second hour, we're going to be doing, we got a lot of questions lining up for the MixPre, and it will be mostly your questions. We'll talk a little bit about how we use the MixPre at the beginning, and then we're going to be answering your questions. So definitely start stacking those questions up and it's really, really important to vote right now for the questions that you want. We've got a lot of questions for the first hour, so throw those votes in. And of course, you can ask questions throughout the day with askofficehours.global. Next question.
Jack Ruppel in Breckenridge, Colorado. Hugh Ho on TikTok posted about using iOS 17.2 to record spatial video for MetaQuest. Is there evidence of any kind of Apple event recorded in spatial? And he's got the TikTok link there.
Apple there's been some behind the scenes showing larger cameras that are shooting spatial. I'm sure that Apple is shooting lots of tests with spatial right now. And I think that, and the format that they're using is a known format. This is the HVAC MV or MV-HVAC or whatever. So it's not like it's an unknown format, but I think people have been kind of banging their head on the wall to try to figure out, because it's not a full 2 eyes. It's a hero eye with a delta, and that makes it a little harder to unpack. Go ahead, Chris.
At the risk of being the dumb guy in the room, can I just ask this question? Because I keep hearing this come up, this spatial thing.
Yep.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's stereo video. Spatial video that's what they're calling it. Apple's calling it spatial video. It's
Why
stereo.
Are we changing the name all of a sudden?
I don't know, because they want it to be spatial. They have spatial audio. They want spatial video. It's Apple. They got to put a brand on things and make it confusing. So the like that's what they do. So it's basically capturing for two eyes. I will say that they may be calling it spatial because it's not truly that. The interaxial distance between the lenses is much closer. They're only capturing the delta on the second thing, so it's not truly stereo in the same way. So I think that they might be kind of going around that, yeah. And
basically what they're doing is they're going to use, I'm sorry, the light's really bad.
Yeah, the two lenses. The two top lenses when you turn sideways, yep. And there's a lot of data, a lot of math that has to happen there because those aren't the same lenses. And so they have to do a lot of trickery to get two identical. And they're not only saving the main eye, the hero eye, which is typically the left eye, and the delta. They are saving tons and tons of metadata that's going to be that theoretically will pass through your editing system. So you can just simply work with it, and when you put it out, people who have watched it in 2D see 2D. People who are watching spatial see spatial. So that's the.
And so and are we talking like, sorry, dating myself, 50s era, red, blue glasses?
No, this is the only thing that you're going to see this on is the Vision Pro. So that's this is your every iPhone sold since September, or every iPhone 15 can shoot content for the Vision Pro that will be 3D. It'll have dimension to it, and so people thought, oh, that's not going to really work because it's going to look really weird to have your Vision on when you're shooting your kid's birthday. But my son's birthday is in 2 weeks. I guarantee you, I'm going to be shooting with my phone in stereo so that when I get a Vision, I can see it in 3D. It's the first birthday I'll be able to do that. So there you go.
And this is why Final Cut will never go away.
Final Cut's not going anywhere. No, these are development tools that Apple needs to have. Like it's not, they're not, I think we worry about whether they solve the problems that we want as filmmakers, but Final Cut's not going anywhere. And neither is Motion or Compressor or anything else. These are so core to the pipeline of what Apple's doing with the Vision that they could never let them go. So if you think that if Apple's going to work on Vision for the next 10 years, you can be guaranteed that Final Cut, Motion, Compressor, all those things are going to be here for the next 10 years because they have to have control over the development pipeline for content for the headset. So the thing is that, so I think that the reason that we have seen, I don't have any data, but my belief is the reason we've seen a slower development on other features is because the features coming out for the Vision Pro are going to be intense. So
I wonder if there's talk about using the rear facing or the selfie camera and making the phone into a 360 camera.
Yeah. I don't think so. It's not that. It's actually, here's the funny thing is, as someone who shot a lot of 360 is really hard to be interesting because now it is if you can get someone to experience a space and blah, blah, blah. But really when you're shooting something, the 180 is really what everything you want to watch is in front of you. And when you include 360, you make the whole production pipeline way harder. Go ahead, Bill, real quick. I'm going to move on.
Yeah, you hit it, actually. I was saying Vision Pro is where spatial becomes important, and all that ability to track eyes and things like that works in a 3D space. So, yeah.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas says, X-Real 2 glasses, Guy Cochran has shown on office hours and in after hours, just went mainstream on Amazon. I know you guys think $399 US is stiff, but have you seen the specs? Lightweight AR and VR with no battery, no neck strain, and he's got a link there to it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it looks like, and they've gone one further, the other ones where you had to have the little, I think you have some, Alex, where you have to have the little plastic blackout things to go VR versus AR. This one now has LCD shutters on the main part of the glasses, so you just tap the side of it and it blacks out the glasses, so it goes from augmented reality to virtual reality. Although in their demo, you can still kind of see through the video, so I don't know how great it is for doing VR versus AR. And it uses some newer Sony OLEDs that are about 25% brighter than the previous version. So
I think the problem was we all got excited about the new one and we bought it. And then we now have it. So now we're not interested in the second one. The PR that went around the first, the sale, this is the problem. The sale got us all committed. And now we're all committed. Like we have the other one. I don't know if
They iterated too fast.
Yeah, they iterated too quickly. Like I'm just like not interested because I already spent the money on the one that I have. Go ahead, John.
You don't see anything about resolution, which is kind of disappointing to see. But 120 hertz refresh rate, that starts to become compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes to us from James Brooks in New York, looking to pick up a blimp for my shotgun microphone. Which one is the best buy? Thanks.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, as Mickey would say, it depends. Depends on the mic that you have. If you've got a Rode makes a blimp that you can put on there, and even Rycote makes a addition that you can use with it. If you have a Sennheiser, use a Sennheiser blimp. It's going to fit the microphone properly. There's a whole ecosystem of covers for your shotgun out there. I would go with Rycote as a starting point. Go from there.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, you don't have to go with the blimp that your specific microphone manufacturer makes. Like, say, if you have a Sennheiser mic, you don't have to use a Sennheiser blimp. Most of these are universal. They have a range of sizes of microphones that they could fit. I would perhaps recommend take a look at the spacer bubble from Bumblebee Industries. That, along with the fur, could handle a lot of environments that in the past only a blimp could handle. So going with the spacer bubble with a fur on it is a lot lighter than a full-on blimp. Also take a look at their what they're calling the wind killer. It's a sort of a heavier duty softy. Also take a look at the Cinella is a company from France. They make really, really good shock mounts and also blimps that, although pricey, perform really well. There's also a new company from the UK called Radius Wind Shields, and they have a softy that they call the Nimbus. I haven't tried it myself personally, but people I know who have them really like them.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I agree with Mitch. Rycote is pretty good. And look for a blimp that has a good shock mount in it, and the mic is separate from the basket that's surrounding it so that it can bounce around inside that basket without hitting the inside of the basket. That's an important thing. And to be able to have the blimp easily removable, because you may want to, it's going to affect their sound somewhat. And the thicker the blimp material, the fur, put a furry on it or whatever the material is that blimp is lined with, it's going to affect the high frequency response of the microphone somewhat. So if you want to not affect your sound very much, you want to pull it off when you're not using it indoors. So that's important. That can go on and off quickly without having to completely disassemble the microphone and shock mount to get them together. And also be careful. Some of those Rycote windscreens that have the polyethylene basket on it, they have a fairly rough surface. So if you don't have a sock on it, it can whistle in a strong wind. You'll hear the wind going across those little protuberances on the end of the basket. So you have to put some kind of smooth sock over it to prevent the wind from getting in there and whistling around it.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. Finally got our first ATEM Mini Pro ISO in the office. What tips, tricks, or wisdom can you share when new to the Blackmagic world? And why can't it natively stream into Zoom, yet it does to YouTube, Twitch, and so forth?
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, it can stream natively into Zoom if you mean broadcasting, I guess, from Zoom. But tips and tricks, I'll leave you with this. Straight and away, you absolutely want MixEffect Pro. It just unlocks the entirety of the super source and makes the entire thing much more easy to address. I need a little bit more clarification to understand what you mean by streaming directly in.
Yeah, the UVC is directly in. I mean, it's actually, I think, almost identical to the encoder that's being used to send out. We found out to streaming to YouTube. So you are getting what you need. In fact, probably something better than what you have to YouTube as far as the latency. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jack Ruppel in Breckenridge, Colorado again. During the Apple event, a follow focus device, wireless, was used. Could the crown on an Apple Watch be used for the same thing?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
The device that they were using is the Tilta Fizz, and it's ergonomically designed specifically as a follow focus device. You can hold it in one hand. You can do pretty much everything you need. I don't think you're going to get the same ergonomics out of a Apple Watch or a flat iPad or something like that.
Yeah,
if you really want the best thing, you want the ergonomically designed.
And I think it was the Nucleus that they were using there, I believe, not the Fizz. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and a good camera assistant doesn't really necessarily, you may not have a monitor, especially if you're using the iPhone as your source to pull focus on. And a lot of times they'll put marks on that white ring that's surrounding the focus pull device so that they can put their marks. Okay, here's where I'm going to be when the dolly hits mark number 2, and here's where I'm going to be when the actor hits mark number 3. And they just rotate the knob to the mark that's on that little scribble wheel that surrounds the knob. And you can't do that on the crown of your watch. It'd be very hard to write on that crown.
Yeah, that'd be almost impossible. It would not work. Next question.
Very tiny white gaff tape. You can do it. Just kidding. Chester Sweeney, Las Vegas, Nevada. If I watch office hours with the Safari window really small as compared to full screen on my 38-inch 4K Sony TV, will there be an internet data per episode difference?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, this would be dependent on the resolution you have selected within your player, either on Safari, the web player on Safari, or within your your YouTube app on your TV. Also, do note that if you are paying for YouTube Premium, you have the option for a higher bitrate 1080p feed as well.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, one thing you can do to confirm is if you right-click and do Stats for Nerds, it'll tell you what your window size is as well as what resolution you're pulling down.
Next question.
Another entry from our QR codes, this one from Peter Butcher in Sydney, Australia. I'm creating custom GPTs for clients and need to train the model on a range of brand data, including website content. Can anyone suggest a good tool better than SiteSucker to extract a website to PDF format or even to HTML?
Go ahead, John.
This is a whole second hour here, and the problem is it's changing so fast. Just when you get comfortable with one tool, they come out with either a new platform for training and modeling moving forward, or the input side, the vector size on the input sizes makes it really easy to put, up to say hundreds and hundreds of pages input as a vector as opposed to pre-training. So this is difficult. This is not a 1, 2, 3 question to answer.
Next question.
Guy Cochran, Seattle, USA. What makes the Fuji GFX 100 II a prominent runner-up for Camera of the Year? And he's got a link there to it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Haven't had a chance to look at too much of it, but it has a really large sensor, larger than full frame, and can record 8K ProRes, so that's pretty handy, and having a DSLR. And Fuji, of course, has made great cameras for many, many years. I'm not wearing my Fuji hat today, but I do have one.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. I mean, I have to admit that I wasn't tracking this until this question, so I'm a little caught off guard. I've only known about it for the last 11 minutes, but it looks like a really interesting camera. I mean, it's definitely something I'd love to take out and test. It's got now the 120 frame per second is only full HD, which is 1080p, 8K 30, 4K 60. So there's a couple different formats there, but it does look like it is, considerably. I mean, it's a big sensor. It's really interesting. Yeah, so we'll have to take a closer look at it. Next question.
Jens Olsen in Sager, Idaho said, did anyone else bite the bullet and order Moment's new bigger T-Series lens? I'll try to do some test photos comparing with stock lenses and post them to Discord. Cool.
Please do. I saw these lenses and I was like, oh, I have to get these. And I was like, no, I can't do that right now. So I have to suppress myself. So I haven't bought these lenses, but they look really cool. So so let us know what you think of them, and maybe put a comment in and give us some links to some stuff you've shot, because we'd love to know what you think. Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway. In the future, do you think that Apple will be able to use computational methods to create a shallow depth of field look in video reliably that can resemble a large sensor camera?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Sure, Zoom does it now with varying degrees of success. I don't like their virtual backgrounds at all, but they are doing it, so Apple should be able to one-up them a wee bit.
Apple is one-upping them, actually. The webcam version of Apple's is better than Zoom. Zoom does too much shallow depth of field, so it looks weird. I think that Zoom's version is designed to obscure your background, it's not designed to look good. And so because it doesn't.
Plus it gives them jello head.
But that's because, and Apple's does a very subtle, like, I'm giving you short depth of field. As the LiDAR gets better, as the computational photography gets better, we have already seen it from the beginning of when they've done shallow depth of field to now is 10x better, and we'll continue to see that improve. Will it get to the absolute same? I don't know. We'll see. But I bet you it will get to a point where most people can't see the difference in the next 2 or 3 versions. Next question.
Yet another QR code submission, this one from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas. The analog Moog lead software instrument in Logic Pro, how accurate is it?
I'm going to guess a lot of these are pretty close to accurate. They're not going to be the same as the actual, the actual device. They're not going to have, what I find with a lot of these filters is there's a warmth that's missing in the filters that you just don't quite hear the same thing, but it gets pretty close. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just want to add that yes, these emulations are typically very close since they do take impulses from the actual hardware itself. But I think an important thing is, are you able to get the sound that you're looking to get? And if you are, does it really matter if it's accurate or not?
Yeah. Go ahead, Courtney.
And when you're performing, having a knob for a filter that you can turn as you're playing, is really important. It's hard to do that on a software plugin unless you're using an outboard MIDI controller that gives you a bunch of knobs that you can play with.
Yeah, and you can do that a lot of times with MIDI. Yeah, the controllers and everything else. But yeah, I do find that there's a whole discussion there about like preamps. I'd love to talk. We probably should talk preamps for there's a lot of discussion about the quality of a preamp, but I just want it to be pure. Like, I just want it to be the cleanest preamp I can get with the lowest amount of noise. I don't want to do anything to the audio, but you talk to a lot of people who want it to sound like a certain thing. Next question.
Jack Ruppel in Breckenridge, Colorado. I have a Qualcomm Cam Ego, and that's spelled QUOOCAM for those of you who might be looking it up. He has that Ego camera. Can I remap metadata to view on a Vision Pro simulator?
Not yet, but I would be blown away if you can't in the future. So I think that the camera is letting you cap stereo. I think that there's no way that Apple won't have tools that allow you to do that, not in the not too distant future. So stay tuned for that. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Is the AWS well-architected tool really going to move the needle for cloud production, or is it going to serve a niche market segment to benefit?
Go ahead, John.
These best practices tools have existed on many different cloud platforms for a long time. I don't think it's moving the needle anywhere. It's a good double check just to make sure that you are following the best practices of a said cloud, but it's not going to make your productions any more stable or better. It's just going to make sure that some basic boxes are checked. You have to have a good engineer who understands the platform, make sure everything is set up correctly, make sure you understand what you're paying for. Otherwise, costs can get out of control.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, I remember going to a local festival where the festival front of house engineer had a compressor on the video playback channels because he was getting video with varying audio levels. Would a mastering plugin in the NLE help keep audio levels even when editing?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd say this is a typical scenario for playback for events wherein the vendor that's providing these playback assets did not run the assets through a proper mix or were not given a specific spec. Typically, we would run through every single asset and note down at what fader level or input gain trim we would have for each asset. But if we don't have time to do that, or we get the assets while the show's already going on, which happens quite often, I would put a compressor there just to tame those peaks.
Coming up next, we'll be talking about the MixPre-3. Quick reminder that tomorrow's just Q&A, but Q&A is full, and we've got so many questions to answer for you. So we'll be doing Q&A tomorrow. Friday is the Office Hours website. We're going to talk about, as a group, what we'd like to see more of and less of. Saturday, of course, is Q&A as well, and we do a lot of training, and it's a great time to get onto the panel if you'd like to do that. And Sunday, of course, is more introspection. We talk a little bit about what we, what's working, what's not working, how we want to handle it. So stay tuned for all of those. And right now, we're going to go ahead and jump into the second hour. Welcome back to the second hour, and we're really excited to talk about the MixPre. We are here. We've got, of course, a lot of our resident experts, but adding to the resident experts, we actually, we're really excited to have Paul Isaacs from Sound Devices. Paul is the Director of Product Management and Design at Sound Devices, and so the MixPre is something he knows a little bit about. He knows, he's got he not only knows where the bodies are, he has the shovel. So anyway, he really understands it, and we're really excited to have it. We've got a lot of questions packing up around this second hour. I think maybe the most questions we've ever had for a second hour. There is a lot of us here use the MixPre, and I think just as an aside, how many people here in the panel are actually using a MixPre? I just wanted to, so a couple of us, and a lot of us have, and I will say that, there is having the interface that has been powerful, and for me, the big thing with the MixPre, the reason I got it at first, and the reason I use it at first is because of NoiseAssist. I mean, I've got fans and all kinds of other stuff that's going on here, and I turn it up and down depending on what's going on around me, and I still feel like it's better than cedar, and it's just softer than cedar. Like cedar, when you turn it up, it gets a little crunchy, and NoiseAssist tends not to do that, and so I've been kind of addicted to it there. But as we've gotten deeper and deeper into this, and as more of us use the MixPre, the real power of it is all the routing. The things that we're doing with it. I know in this group, there's so many. I think that if anyone watched Chris Fenwicks, short on how he's piping all of these different channels in and using, mapping all of these things to separate channels and so on and so forth. That's something that I just don't find in a lot of other recorders of that in the form factor and the price point. So a lot of us use it pretty heavily. And I don't know if any of the panelists want to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to ask Paul a little bit about, has it been seen as the MixPre line, I guess, been seen as a success compared to the much heavier recorders that Sound Device normally makes or has made in the past?
Well, good morning.
Good morning, Paul.
Crew and audience, good to be here. It's been a while since I've been on Office Hours, so this is a real treat. And I'm going to sort of question whether I know more about this than you guys. I know you guys are using this product regularly across like 101 different diverse applications. So, I know a lot about it, but I know that you guys are pushing it into sort of different areas and using it in different ways. So I'm sure you can probably tell me a lot about it too.
Go ahead.
In terms of your question, Alex, do we see the MixPre as a success compared to the 8 series, I guess, and the 7 series? Absolutely. I mean, before the MixPre, we didn't really play in this sort of like price market. So why we entered the MixPre is because this type of market, the prosumer, sort of crossing the consumer to the professional in between markets, is because obviously there's a lot more content creation going on, and we saw that like 5-6 years ago that we needed to get into that, being experts in recording and mixing, but we didn't really want to enter the fray until we knew we could still provide the Sound Devices quality, build quality and preamp quality, because we didn't want to compromise on that. And we wondered whether we could at first, but I think we've managed to do that. And certainly the number that we've sold and the diverse use cases we see it in, it's been an absolutely huge success for us. And,
and I think even we're an example of that in some cases, in the sense that, I do take MixPres out into the field, but my primary MixPre is sitting here on my desk as my primary audio interface, just for my webcam or for my for my Zoom events, and it's really powerful that way, and so it is a very diverse. You don't think of it as just a field recorder.
Absolutely. I mean, probably field recording is the smallest part of it, to be quite honest. Obviously, it is widely used. Better podcasting, YouTubing, any form of content creation, video camera, DSLR users, musicians. It's across the board, really. So from consumer to pro. And a lot of professionals use it as a backup tool as well. I think there's many 8 series users out there who have one sitting on their cart or in their bag or what have you. Or a lot of pros prefer to use it for, when they really want to be light. I've seen so many users using a MixPre-6 or a MixPre-10 with a couple of, 2 or 4 channels of wireless receivers in a bag. And it's such a nimble kit, a small footprint kit, that people seem to like it a lot.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Paul, I wanted to say first, thank you for being here. I'm a MixPre wannabe. I especially want it for the NoiseAssist. I have done so much research on what is the best real-time noise reduction system out there, and NoiseAssist comes up every time as my number one choice. Is there a chance, just a chance, that you may consider providing some kind of licensing to other people to use that as a real-time noise assistant, or perhaps a standalone box that's just getting a mic preamp and noise assist in there? Or is that the MixPre?
I think there's very low chance we'll license it to companies outside Audiotonics. As you know, sort of like Sound Devices got bought by Audiotonics couple of years ago, and our sibling companies are Digico, Allen and Heath, SSL, and they do a lot of plug-in products for their mixers, and we've had lots of internal talks about sharing plugins. I can't say what's going to happen in the future, but if we were ever to do something like that, it would be with our sibling companies that we work with. We wouldn't be licensing that out to anyone else. It wouldn't be a simple thing for a third party to build into their products. I mean, it's very FPGA intensive type of a design. Not to say it's not possible. So yeah, that's the what I'd say in terms of licensing. In terms of making a dedicated, are you talking about sort of like some sort of USB audio interface?
He's not talking about that, but we are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say never. I mean, it's a nice idea, like a one-channel MicPre, Cashmere MicPre with NoiseAssist on a small little box that you can connect anywhere. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a nice little tool. Whether we can do it at a price which makes sense, because obviously you'd want something like that much cheaper than a MixPre-3, which is going for about, $900 these days off the top of my head. So, we'd have to sort of make it such that it's a lot cheaper than that. And one of the challenges there is the FPGA price. And so obviously we can cut costs in terms of maybe time code and all the extra mic preamps and maybe some work on mechanicals and stuff. But the actual FPGA price cost, we may not be able to get down. That's a significant part of the whole product. So I don't know. I mean, I like the idea, and it's something we can certainly internally discuss and see if it's possible. But I guess you want a standalone box, battery powered, and but you'd also want it to be a USB audio interface at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah,
so
a lot of us would love that.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, and also for me, it's this is not really a MixPre conversation, but being able to have it remote controllable, like that all the knobs, you can do some things with it, but I can log into it and make it go. For us, we're sending these out as kits. I send out the MixPre all the time, and then trying to explain to someone how to use a MixPre remotely is we set it all up as best we can, but then we're like, can you turn this little knob? And then we would like to turn that knob for them.
Alex, I know we've had these conversations numerous times.
15 years.
IP remote control of said box.
Yeah.
And believe me, we're having these internal discussions all the time. I mean, the whole of our company is like looking at this field because it's no doubt a massively growing part of the industry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Good, Chris.
So you heard it here first, the birth of the MixPre-3 I. Hey, Paul, did I hear correctly? This thing records also? It records. Oh, is that what the REC button means?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm so glad I was here today. Thank you. Thank you so
means
much.
that it's time for recreation. You press that button. And then
that's what I thought.
That's great. Go ahead, Courtney.
He's always wondered what that little red light was for. Good to see you, Paul. I haven't been able to bother you in quite a while. I have my MixPre-3 I here, and I was wondering, was NoiseAssist developed in-house, or did you guys license it from somebody? And is it possible, is there an FPGA in this that can be upgraded to accept the NoiseAssist, to upgrade a version 1 to a version 2?
Right. So NoiseAssist was developed in-house. We have a very talented audio algorithm designer here. Took the best part of a few years. This guy, Steve, he's just on a different planet. He tends to speak to you in ones and zeros. He doesn't communicate in English. I'm sure you've all met someone like that.
Speaks in opcodes, yes.
Yeah, we just told him to go away and work on this algorithm, gave him the specs, and over the course of a number of years, we honed it in. He would give us the first algorithm, we tweaked it, and it was all developed in-house, and we're extremely proud of that algorithm. We know it's not a simple thing to develop, so we sort of feel quite confident in the competitive landscape that no other manufacturer is going to jump onto that easily. And we've, as you know, we've got a collaborative relationship with Cedar as well. Our 8 series, and that was a very long development. And you talk to them, and they'll tell you it was a huge amount of research to develop their algorithm as well. So yes, that was all developed in house. In terms of whether the MixPre-3 I series can be updated, sadly not. The MixPre-3 II series have bigger FPGAs, which allow it to support NoiseAssist.
It takes more oomph. Did you improve the, since I only have the reference of the one to work with, which was the problem with my problem with using the Sound Devices a lot of times was related to its power, because it really consumes a lot of power. Did they improve the power handling capability on the 2 versions so it's a little more easy on the batteries?
I'm going to say probably not.
Performance.
It still burns through burns through those batteries like crazy. I mean, got to get I get out my big Marine battery for 95 amp hour.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've definitely found that putting the AC adapter on the back or the DC adapter on the back, and then being able to feed it in has been our primary use for it. Connecting it to larger batteries. I mean, you can do it for a little while with those AA's and the little battery, but we've really found that we had to put something more beefy on the back end.
If you are going to use AA's, make sure to use nickel metal hydrides or lithium primaries. Don't use standard cells.
Yeah. Alkalines will last you about 20 minutes. Yeah.
They last you long enough to set it up. Like that, if you put a standard battery in there, they're like, okay, we're done.
You should get out of 4 nickel metal hydrides like Loop Pros. You should get over 2 hours.
Oh no, I'm saying with the regular ones. If you put a regular battery in there, it lasts long enough to kind of get it set up for the show, and then you're done. So yeah, it's you get better time with the other ones. Yeah,
well, I mean, that is certainly a weak point, I think, of powering over AAs. And if we ever go forward and do another series, that's something we'll try and address. But there's only so much you can do if you're still trying to maintain that functionality and that wide range capability that the FPGA gives you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to show, like, aside from the Marine batteries that Courtney uses, I mostly use these eSmart batteries. This one's from Inspired Energy and runs through a battery distribution system that powers the MixPre. But since Paul is here, and I just want to get this out of the way, Paul, when will we see a new 970, please.
970. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's no longer part of the sound devices. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Talk about that more, Mickey. Maybe offline. You're always free to contact me directly to discuss your needs there.
it was one of the 970 is just one of the best machines. Like, the most.
Alex and I are
amazing.
waiting for the PIX 240 II.
Yeah, exactly. I still use my PIX 240. I can't quite get my camera to it right now. It sits on my desk, and it's still all my screen records and a lot of things. I've still got a couple of them here. So it's
you use it as a doorstop?
No, I use it to record when I do screen captures. I use it because I plug it. I take it out of my computer. There, it's amazing because you can take the audio from the computer and the mic and put it into the different channels and everything else. It's one of the best pieces of
It's
hardware.
always within arm's reach. Just to let you know.
Exactly. And just to show people a little bit, I mean, I'm sure that all of us can do this, but one of the things that I think is really powerful is this ability to have like control over this in a very specific way. So for instance, for me, one of the things that I use this for, and we'll get into a lot of different use cases, but if you look at this here, by the way, this is the MixPre-3 II, which is another one of my favorite pieces of hardware ever made. And I use that to route another computer into the MixPre when I need it, as a safety. It's like I have Dante and all kinds of other stuff, but if Dante doesn't work, I want to make sure I can get it out there. Anyway, point is that what I'm doing here, and this is really designed by Mickey more than me, is what you're seeing here is I'm actually coming in on the third channel. But if someone talks a little bit, you'll see what happens on the first channel.
Hello. Testing 1, 2.
So that first channel is coming in from the computer. So I have, so I'm mapping the return back to that first channel. And there's two big advantages of that. One is I can record it. So if I want to have a two-way conversation, record both of them, I can record those on separate channels. But the other thing is that I can attenuate how this sounds. So I can control the mix to my headset because I'm listening. Of course, I'm listening to myself. I'm also listening to the remote, and I can decide how loud I want myself versus the remote. And I just have very fine tuning over that process, which has been for me just pretty golden.
And you're doing that routing in that box?
I'm doing all the routing in the box. Yeah, like this is so this is of it going in and out. Yeah, and that's when you look at this here, I'm going in and if I push in one here, and you can see, my input here is USB 1. Yeah. So that's that's what I have there, and so it's.
Alex, I pretty much do the same as you, but sort of in reverse. I'm using a MixPre-6 right now, and I have the USB returns from my computer coming in on 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And I'm on channel 1. And what I do is I set my channel 1 to send to you pre-fade. So I can screw around with the actual fader for my own local balance if I need to. What I'm sending you is all determined by the gain control in the actual preamp. So having that post-fade, pre-fade sort of capability is great for all sorts of things, including mix minuses, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mickey?
And what I typically set up for folks with MixPre-3 is their return coming from the computer into 1 and 2 because only channels 1 and 2 on the MixPre-3 can be linked together. I don't know if that's changed with the additional 2-channel plugin. But yeah, on the MixPre-6, I would have it reversed, similar to Paul, wherein their mics, their local mics come in on channels 1 or channels 1 and 2, and then the return coming from the computer on 3 and 4.
While you brought this up, Mickey, I don't know if this question was going to come up anyway, but while we're talking, we should talk about the MixPre-3 +2 plugin while we're here, because I hope some of you probably realize we released firmware a couple of weeks ago, version 9. No one was expecting it at all. Everyone thought it was like a product which was, great and all, but it had gone through its round of firmware updates. I think the previous firmware update was like about 18 months ago or something like that. We released version 9, and the two big things there were on the MixPre-3 Series 1 or 2, so this is also for Courtney, you can expand the channel count on your MixPre-3 from a 3 ISO 5-track recorder to a 5 ISO 7-track recorder. And those extra input channels 4 and 5 can be fed from your unbalanced aux-in input,
Oh, great.
or it can be fed from USB. So, an ideal use case for 4 and 5 for USB, if you're using that as a return, it means you don't have to eat up the other 3 channels for that purpose, which is significant, I think.
And
So,
that will work on even the one with the puny FPGA that I have, huh? I
Yes,
didn't download version 9 because I thought I couldn't install it. So.
you can. Yes, you can.
Wow. Backward compatibility.
Where we can, we will. We're not going to artificially hamper something that way. So that's the +3. I've been in +2 on the MixPre-3s, and then obviously we added an option for 2 channels of NoiseAssist. Originally, it was only 1 channel. So it gives you.
And that's for the MixPre-3 or MixPre-3
Yes,
or the 2, the Series 2 for all of them.
For all 3 models, the 3, 6, and 10. So it gives you a bit more flexibility in what you want to do there.
Absolutely. Now go ahead, Chris.
Alex, I was curious when you showed yours, you're not. First question, where are your headphones plugged into, Alex?
My headphones are actually plugged into my MixPre. So they're.
Why don't you use input USB 2 so you can get a left and right out of your Mac?
Because I don't care. I mean, it's mostly, I mean, if I take a second channel in, I mean, so here's the thing. I have another cable that sticks out of my Mac. When I want to listen to stereo, I actually move my headphones over to that one. So for the MixPre is for me to, and the thing is I use that, the second channel is used primarily for my presentation machine to go back into the MixPre. So that this USB Pre 2 that you see below it, that comes out of my presentation machine, and that goes into the MixPre and then is returned back to the computer. Now, oftentimes I'll use Dante for that, but the main thing, because I got Dante sound card on all the machines, so I can pass those back and forth. But I've had issues where I get into it and suddenly Dante's not doing what I expect it to do. And so I need to have, like, if I'm doing a presentation and I want to have video in the playback, I have an analog output that goes into the MixPre that I can go use this as the sound as your output, and boom, it works. And I still have control over its volume and its mix and its all those things that are going in. And so that's why channel 2 is my second input from another computer, which in this case is the the USB Pre 2 that sits right below it.
Do you think
you could also use your 205 with Dante output? And do the mix there if you want to.
So I will say that Dante Virtual Sound Card works most of the time, but not all the time. And so I don't build more heavily into it. I use it as a convenience, but for things that I really need, I still have cables. And I use Dante very heavily in big projects, but with lots of hardware. Dante Virtual Sound Card again is not, for me, 100% success rate. And so I don't, and sometimes I get into a situation where I'm like, anyway, that's a non-MixPre thing. But anyway, that's why I don't do that. Go ahead, Jeff.
I would love if someone can show, first of all, how this shows up to the computer. In other words, is it one single multi-channel device, or does it actually show up as
Chris can
more
show
than
that.
device in and out? And then, is there a software app that you can use to do some of this configuration optionally, or is everything done with the front controls on the device?
Yeah, all set up on the MixPre is done from the front controls of the device,
which are it's like a black magic when you first start, not black magic the company, but like it's like magical. You're like, I'm so confused, and then once you get into it, it works really well. I mean, like, now I'm just like the only thing that I get myself in trouble with is, let me see if I cut this, that I always do here is if I go in here and I go to maybe I got it, outputs, and I'm setting my outputs here. For some reason, I go in here and I have this set, and I always I always want to hit home, I think, or whatever, or I always end up back out. Like I go, like I set this thing, and it's just a weird. Like
when you get to that screen, use the knob on the side instead of trying to touch it. It's too hard to touch.
Yeah. There are screens like,
obviously it's got to be able to configure everything when it's mobile, but surely you guys considered and talked about the option to have an app that lets you optionally configure it on a computer, it's just not enough demand or not a priority to do that?
Well, we do have an app, but it just doesn't run on a computer. It's called Wingman. It's for Android and iOS. Would an app on a tablet or a phone be sufficient for that purpose?
Oh yeah. Like we would an iOS app that did, or Android app or whatever that did all the things that front screen does would be massive. Wingman, we use Wingman to control. So we send out these MixPres with Mac Minis, and we put Wingman on the Mac Mini, and that's how we see if we see levels, and that's also how we hit record remotely when we're doing records. So the Wingman is really useful. But if Wingman had all the features and we could sit there and route everything, wow, like that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd like that too.
Paul, the weak link in the MixPre is the screen and the user interface. It suffers from, it's a product designed by geniuses for geniuses. And you really got to, like, imagine your mother and say, okay, Mom, let's hook this up. Like, if you can't make your mom work it, you've missed the mark. And that might be a little exaggeration, but I think you have to get the geniuses to design for dumb people. Like me, I'd be a great candidate. And it's like, I wouldn't recommend the MixPre to most people I know because the user interface is daunting.
So yeah, that is a very good point. And Chris, and I'm sure you're aware that there are a number of things we did in the UI to try and simplify it. For instance, there's your basic mode, which sort of strips it down to a stereo recorder. There's like various custom modes, but those custom modes are actually very hard to get your head around unless you sort of really study them. There is another a plugin called the Reporter plugin, which strips it back even further than basic mode. So really, there's actually no menus at all. All that functions is the record, stop, and play button and the volume controls. And it just then becomes a device you plug your mic into, you plug your headphone into, and away you go. I mean, that's as simple as it gets, really.
Right.
But as soon as you start to want to get into sort of routing, and actually that Reporter plugin, you can actually configure the routing and basically lock it down so that a user can't accidentally screw it up. But as soon as you want any form of flexible routing, your mother is going to sort of keel over and want to go back.
And this gets back into the, if we were able to take the USB, by the way, and just plug it into an Ethernet cable, maybe,
Just, here we go.
Then
the word just, Alex, please.
Then we get full control over it remotely.
Yeah, we've forbidden the word just and should in engineering. There were two words that are not allowed.
It's simple and easy. I'm sure it'd be simple and easy to do that. Sorry, I just.
But yeah, I mean, I do want to go back to this point of Wingman, enhancing Wingman to much more flexible, and it's something again we talk about internally.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, if you take a look at SD Remote now, which is the app for controlling the 8 series, that's far more fully featured. You can do all sorts of routing and output monitoring, bus control, all this sort of stuff from there. And there's more to come.
You can write faders as well on
being able to control
faders as well on SD Remote.
And Wingman. I'm not going to say never on Wingman, but I guess that's what you're looking for in terms of adding more control there. Whether we can get every single menu setting into an app, I don't know, but I know what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's
Paul,
funny.
I'm sorry. Would you imagine this software being updated before or after the MixPre 1 is released? Sorry.
So it took me a second to see that. Yeah. Anyway, we have so many questions stacking up for the.
Bring up one other thing in terms of remote control, and this is a bit of a hack, but I've done it. Anyone ever heard of USB Stick? And the USB remote app on an iPhone or Android?
No.
It's basically the USB Stick is a Bluetooth USB keyboard emulator. So essentially, this is an app that sends USB keyboard commands via Bluetooth. to your MixPre. It's just a little dongle that sticks in the side. And you can actually, with the app, create macros to do anything using USB keyboard commands. So I can actually get to any menu and make any setting from my phone. I can even do gain control and stuff like that. Yes, it is a bit of a hack, but if you're bored one day.
Well, and you can connect these to MIDI boards, right?
Well, you can, but they're very much specific. Yeah, we do support USB MIDI, but it's not like an open protocol like MCU. We have like 3 or 4 different controllers we support, like the Nano Control, the MIDI.
So it's not a true MIDI. It's not just pure vanilla MIDI.
Exactly. We're actually supporting the protocols that these controllers support, and they're like custom, and they're not really using MCU.
Right. So, because that would be the way around it, like without having to do anything else. Because then we could send MIDI controls, MIDI interfaces to the MixPre, and that could be done remotely. Like, so anything that the MIDI controller could do, we could do if we had, if we figured out a way to do that protocol, and then you wouldn't have to do anything other than, well, I'm sure you'd have to do something, but
yeah,
simple and easy.
We can entertain that idea of supporting MC on the MixPre as well in the future.
Okay. We've got tons of questions stacking up. If you're watching the show, make sure to vote. So vote questions up and down. We're not going to get to all of them, but we're going to get to as many as we can because we have a lot of them. We had a great discussion for the first half hour, but now we're going to jump into the questions. Let's go into the first question.
Tony Tang in Chicago writes in, tell us about what USB controllers, USB MIDI faders, mute foot switches you use with your MixPre.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit in the lab last week, but I use the Korg, and I use one Korg to talk to the MixPre to do MixPre things, and I do one Korg to talk to Sound Desk to do Sound Desk things. And I think this will show, because Alex asked about this. This is how you route this is how you, in order to get the most functionality of your MixPre, you want to go into the audio MIDI setup and choose more inputs and outputs. I think it defaults at like 2x2, and that's just hampering. That's no fun.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I mostly use the Korg Nano Control as well, although my use case for the MixPre is more of a backup recorder in the cart. So how I remotely control it is to send timecode out of my primary recorder. On the cart, it's usually an 888, sometimes a 688, and feed timecode out of the 688 when I'm rolling, and have the MixPre set to automatically roll when it starts receiving timecode. So that's how I remotely control the MixPre.
That's great. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, can you purchase a MixPre-3 II with NoiseAssist plugin pre-installed? I would like to ship these to execs that are not very tech savvy.
Do they come pre-installed, Paul?
No, they don't.
And I wouldn't do that. I mean, to be honest with you, so we have, I think we have 10 or 11 of these MixPres that we use, and they have NoiseAssist in them. But what we do is, it's not just having the NoiseAssist added to them. We set up all the routing and all the presets and everything else that are all ready to go for that person, and then we send them out. So I would say I wouldn't try to drop ship from Sound Devices or from B&H or wherever you're going to buy it directly to an executive. I would get that MixPre in, get it set up the way you know it should be set up, because it is going to be a specific routing. Put the install NoiseAssist and license it, and then send it out to them. That would be my recommendation. There's enough things to do, as Chris pointed out, to make that happen, to make that needed. Go ahead, Paul.
There might be, if you buy through a dealer, you might be able to come to an arrangement with your local dealer to set that all up for you if that's a very specific, and they'd take care of it. But we wouldn't do it directly from Sound Devices.
And you could even probably send the dealer your preset. Like you can just load a setting, load a setup into it. That's what we did. We got it working on one and then just copied it to the other ones to make sure that they were all the same. Next question.
Asma Gujar in Cape Town, South Africa writes in, learned to view MixPre chain as inputs, channels, buses, and outputs. In buses seems to include left-right stereo out and headphone left-right. Explain the concept buses within the context of a MixPre.
Who wants to jump on that?
Well, I can talk about it. There's that's true. There are buses and there are outputs. So you've got your only recordable mix buses are the left and right buses. The left and right outputs are your physical outputs, which can be routed from any ISO channel or the mix buses or directly from aux in or USB inputs. The headphone output is basically directly hardwired to the headphone left and right mix bus. And they can be configured again with any sort of combination of pre and post fade sources as well. So, yeah, I mean, you can configure to your heart's content. I don't know if there's much more to say about that.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, I'm showing right now the where you can set your routing for your headphone bus. So I guess sort of acts as your monitor bus in this sense. And then you can also go to your outputs and then go to, say, your left output bus and select which source or sources are being fed into your left output bus and right output bus. It's also important to note that the left and right output buses are separate from the main left and right mix bus, which is always being fed by your input channels when they are faded up.
And where was the headset? The headset preset is selected down below, right?
So the headset preset, you go into your menu and then it's in the upper left corner here. So you can, standard is just your left and right stereo mix, but you can also say, just let me go back to first page, listen to your left right mix, but some down to mono. You could listen to your USB 1 and USB 2, or you can also go and edit a preset here and route that accordingly. Get whichever channels you want into your headphone bus.
I tell you, I look at that HP preset and I think I'm talking to my printer.
It's good.
I can't.
See, I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's so nice. I can see everything.
But HP just feels like I'm talking to a Hewlett-Packard printer for some reason. I can't, in my mind, make that mean headphones for some reason.
It should be noted that the physical left and right output, they can be selected to sort of like any source, but there is sort of like a level of mixing there as well. It's not a full mixer matrix, but you could, for instance, select a number of channels and like an aux input and a USB input and sort of like sum them all to that physical output. There are some limitations, like you can't mix the left and right mix bus with ISO channels. It'll sort of like cancel one when you select the other, but there is a level of mixing there as well.
That's great. Next question.
Tony Chang in Chicago writes in, what do you wish the MixPre could do that it can't do today, if anything?
Good question.
Remote control. For me, like just because it's because I send these out to people. I mean, that's the primary use, is sending them out to folks. Go ahead, Courtney.
Run for 4 hours on a on 4-pin light batteries.
There you go.
Are there any?
I mean, I wish that.
Sorry.
As a, and I know that space is important or hard to deal with, but I would say that I would love to have 2 balanced outs of my MixPre-3, like just 2 TA3s out of there. The unbalanced outputs, it's just that's probably the biggest, and admittedly it's the biggest reason I go, oh, I wish I had a 10, because but I the MixPre-3, if it had 2 balanced outs that I could route to, it would be life changing. Like that's probably the biggest thing that would make an impact on for me on a MixPre-3. Go ahead, John.
I think being able to have multiple virtual devices show up within like Windows. I know within the Mac it's a little bit easier, but Windows doesn't have a good way to handle that. And outside of a software that supports ASIO.
Right.
Can you sort of just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with like Elgato or GoXLR's products, they actually create inside Windows multiple devices, and then you're able to mix those devices from within their app. You can do essentially only USB 1 and 2 show up to Windows natively. Otherwise, it requires the ASIO drivers in order for it to function.
Okay.
I think that, I know this will sound crazy, but I would love this to be a button this little thing right here, like an action, like a macro button, like just that I could push it and define what that means. For that would be, and the way I'd probably use it is a mute button. So anyway,
Alex, you needed to get yourself a MixPre-6 because it's got the star button.
I know. Anyway, I got so many MixPre-3s. All right, now next question.
Osman Kajar in Cape Town, South Africa writes in production with MixPre, when should I have stereo out or headphones in my audio chain as IEM talent and as producer and engineer?
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, in this use case, I would certainly leave the actual dedicated headphone out for whoever is operating the MixPre, because that bus is a specific monitor bus. You can solo channels into that headphone out, but if you need to, without affecting what goes out to program or what goes out to your main left and right mix, and use the stereo out, the left and right out to feed your talent's ears.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles, California writes in, could you please discuss the battery options for running a MixPre-6 II for about 7 or 8 hours? Thanks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in a bag rig, my power option of choice is these eSmart batteries. This is manufactured by Inspired Energy, although Sound Devices and also Remote Audio and also Audio Root have rebranded versions, but all of these are created by Inspired Energy. These are proper production grade batteries, and I run it through a battery distribution system so that I can power not only my recorders, mixers, but also wireless receivers off of this.
Those 12 volts out, Mickey? What voltage?
It's lithium, so it's 14.4.
14.4. Okay.
And I use a lot of the small rig 99s. For those things, it has USB as well as barrels and so on and so forth for a lot of different power supplies. In fact, sometimes I hook it to the sled that it goes onto and then I have more outputs. So those have worked really well for me for quite some time. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany writes in, paid apps, for example, NoiseAssist, are tied via the serial number to one device only. If one owns several MixPres, there's no way to inactivate or delete an instance from one MixPre and use the plugin on another. Will we ever see an update to enable that?
I guess that's a question for Paul.
Yeah, probably not. It's the way the way the whole thing's designed, it's very much tied to a serial number. But we are fairly flexible. Like if a unit was bought and you bought a NoiseAssist plugin for a particular serial number and that got stolen or broke in the very early days, we do our best to try and sort of help you migrate it to another unit. We're not going to sort of be draconian in that sense.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind this. I don't like the idea of needing to call home in order to use something. If I don't have internet somewhere, I don't have to worry about it. This just works. And so it's just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, that's how it works now, which makes it work well. Yep. Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada writes in, for home studio use, most of the panel highly recommended the MixPre line. Mickey generally steers people away from it. Take a moment to discuss each side's argument.
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, the MixPre product line, as well as most of Sound Devices products in general, are really designed to be field mixers / field recorders. While the MixPre line does have audio interface capabilities, it's not as we've discussed earlier here. It's not I guess the most intuitive, especially in terms of the user interface, as an audio interface into the computer. There are what I would typically steer people to within the price range of a MixPre-3 or MixPre-6 would be, say, the Apollo line, wherein it does give you a lot of control in terms of cue mixes or what goes out to your ears. It gives you more control if ever you're in a situation where you need to record VO or music. There is a dedicated the TalkBack bus that is fully routable, and also the UI, instead of having to going back to the UI, instead of having to do all the configuration on the 1-inch or 2-inch LCD can be done on a computer that can store all these presets, can be controlled remotely if need be. So that's my thought in terms of MixPre specifically as a user interface, and as a field recorder, it's great.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think I would recommend it to most people, and I think I mentioned that earlier. It's kind of like buying a Jeep with great off-road capabilities when you never will take it off the pavement, but you bought it because it has a great air conditioner, maybe, And so I bought it for the NoiseAssist. If NoiseAssist was a plug-in, I may not have bought it. It's a difficult item to set up. I could have never been successful without Mickey's help. And so that's what I tell people. I go, you got to be careful. You're jumping in the deep end, and you're going to have to learn how to swim. So if you're not willing to take on that challenge, I would highly recommend somebody live with the noise and just get something simpler. For me, I have 100 terabytes of hard drive stacked up around me and a bunch of fans. That's why I have it.
Were you going to say something, Paul?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to Mickey's comment about TalkBack, and the flexibility of that on the Apollo. I don't know if you know, but in the MixPre 10, the last firmware release, we actually do have a fully routable slate mic, which you could configure for TalkBack if you wanted to.
That's great. Yeah, and for me, I think that the thing is, the NoiseAssist is so powerful is that we don't send mix for the reason that they're too complex and I can't control them remotely. We do not send MixPres out for the podcast that I do on Fridays because we are, we're just like, I don't know how I can. Every time we do it, it's just hard to talk to someone through how to get the thing set up. We've set it up and I test it, then I send it to them, and then there's still some confusion there about how to make that work. So that has been that's a challenge. But I will say that half of the shows, I think to myself, oof, this would have been really good with a MixPre. It would have been nice to record locally. It would have been nice to, do all those things. And so that's the thing that we're always struck against is trying to, but figuring out a way to remote control it would be a big deal.
I mean, I get that, Alex. I mean, one thing if you're looking for I don't know if you've tried the Reporter plugin. That simplifies.
The problem is that we're not doing Reporter. I need all the routing. So I need the routing and the NoiseAssist and the stuff that's there. I just need to simplify what they can do.
That stuff is all there still.
Oh, so the Reporter.
I mean, it's all there under the hood. You configure it the way you want it to be. They just don't have access to it.
Oh, that's really cool.
Have a play with it. You might find it will work for you in some situations. Other times it may not, but it's worth investing.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that. I thought it just dumbed it down. But you can set it and then set it to reporter mode, and then all they can do is turn things up and down.
The idea behind it is that a broadcaster is the master of the device. They set it up, they configure it, do all the routing, do everything, and then send it out.
That's great. All right. We'll talk more about that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, does the reporter mode record in 32-bit float?
Yes, it does.
That's
if you set it that way.
Yeah. If you set it up that way, yeah.
Next question.
TJ Worrell in Minneapolis, Minnesota writes in, discuss the best way to get analog audio out of a MixPre-6 V2. Is there a more cost-effective alternative?
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, with the MixPre-6 line, your only outputs, analog outputs, are the stereo out as well as the headphone out. So you can take your unbalanced feed out of the stereo out, or if you need to convert that into a balanced connection, you could use something like a Radial Engineering, I think they call it the AV2 or Pro AV2, to get the balanced, to convert the unbalanced signal into a balanced line level signal.
Yep. Next question.
David Brady in New York writes in, for the absolute beginner, what's the entry point to MixPre? End of year spending coming up.
I will say that if you have the budget, I would get the MixPre 10 because of the analog, because of the balanced outputs. That's the thing that for me, what shifts me to the 10 is not so much that I need all those channels, it's that I need those balanced outputs from the 10. And that's the thing that that if it probably the biggest upgrade to the 3 and the 6 that would have me like ditch the one that I have to buy another one that looks almost identical would be having balanced outputs. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I often say to folks in the community, like, if you think you need the MixPre-3, you actually need the MixPre-6. If you think you need the MixPre-6, you actually need the 10. If you think you need the 10, you actually need an 823. But if you're getting an 823, you'd probably go with an 888 because of Dante.
And once you're in an 888, you might as well just get a Scorpio. All right, next question.
So in other words, forget the MixPre-3, just go direct to the Scorpio.
You know, I ran the first year of this show on a Scorpio. Anyway, so it was great having all the Dante just sitting on the desk. Next question.
Jason Papafasilo in London, England writes in, all your microphone sounds absolutely fantastic. I can't seem to be able to replicate the same with my MixPre-3. Do you use any audio processing to apply EQ and compressor?
Go ahead, John.
I think most of us are going directly into the MixPre, and not to the PC. You know, my room, it sounds a little bit roomy. I don't have any treatment here, but a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into treating the room first, and then having a good microphone close to the source. Those things are going to solve 90% of your problems.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what John said. Solve it early. Started with a decent microphone at a good distance, good sounding room. And in terms of my pipeline, I'm going through a good old Sound Devices 302, very reliable box. And it's going through quite a bit of an audio chain, but the only processing that's happening is a bit of delay for matching video a bit.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm not doing any processing. I think the main thing, Jason, is that audio is very much bound to physics, and you cannot. There's no knob. There's no magic that you can do to fix mic placement if your mic is too far away. Alex is very comfortable seeing microphones. I'm a little bit less, but check your mic placement. It all starts there.
Yeah, I drive people to show their mics mostly because I understand physics, and I just know that there's a distance that gets that gets the highest quality, and usually it's within about 4 inches. It's more than 3, but less than 6. It's the best sounding.
Alex, I'll tell you, oftentimes, one of my clients, they have a thing for the blue Yeti thing, and they'll send them out to people all the time. And I'll listen to it. I go, now, are you using the mic we sent you? Yeah. Well, where is it? And they do this.
Oh yeah. It's like way
if you have
somewhere.
to lean out of frame, it's way too far away.
Yeah.
Put it right in front of you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Go ahead, Mitchell.
How do you do with a situation where you're using a sound technologies, studio technologies, as a mute switch, and you're stuck with that preamp, and you want to use the preamp on the MixPre? I guess you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, I mean, the other addition that would be great on a MixPre is to have the MixPre Plus or whatever that had Dante in it. Would be nice to have. Then I'd be able to pass to and from. But I do wish that I had the preamp from the MixPre instead of going into the 205. But I'm too superstitious, so I go to the 205 to the MixPre analog, and I just it just works. And I don't know how anyone on a show like ours. Part of why everything sounds good is a lot of us are muting pretty aggressively. Now, some people are using software. I don't know how anyone does a show every day without having a hardware mute. Like so I have the 205, which is about the same price as the MixPre. My hand during the show. If you're wondering where this hand is sitting, it's sitting on the mute button, and I'm just constantly turning it on and off while I'm talking. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just want to say, in Zoom, I use the Command-Shift-A shortcut, and it works pretty well. In terms of running through, say, an announcer box like the 205, the mic level output on it is just a loop out, so you're not running through any of the pre's and the studio technologies. And just going back to I mentioned earlier the reliable Sound Devices 302. I brought my 16-year-old Sound Devices 7440 out for the first time in years last Monday, and recorded a sit-down interview for BBC, and it worked well. So that's Sound Devices gear for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I don't do any the only EQ that I do is that I have a mic at the proper distance. I have blankets all the way the part you can't see. So there's hanging blankets, down, because I'm still working on building something nice, but I just have sound blankets all the way around me. And then I have a very complex background, both background and foreground, and so that is what really makes it work. And then a little bit of noise assist to get rid of some of the fans. Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Albuquerque, New Mexico writes, and I use my MixPre-6 for both an audio interface and for recording audio on the same or on some of my video shoots. What should I set up in my recording presets versus my audio interface presets? Sorry to ask about a MixPre-6 on MixPre-3 day.
It's a MixPre day. You can ask about MixPre-6 or even 10. Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, one of the important things to check when you're transitioning between using the MixPre as an audio interface and also as a field recorder is to make sure that the sample rate is what you intend it to be. Because when you connect the MixPre to a computer, it follows whatever your computer tells it to be. So you want to make sure you're at 48, or if you're 48 kilohertz or whatever sample rate you need to be at. Another thing is in a location shoot, you want metadata. So go into your project, create a new project for the day, name it whatever is appropriate. I typically go with the project name, underscore the date, underscore day 1 or day 2 or whichever date of the project it is. I do that for every single shooting day. And then also go into your, let me create a new project there. Just put a name in. Just
and this is where keyboard
put that as a name.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have an SD card in at the moment, but fill out, like I say, if you have Wingman, fill out all the metadata forms there. I'm going to open up Wingman on my iPad here so that I can show you that page. So you can program this both on the MixPre and also on Wingman. You can fill out all the metadata information there, put in the production name, the location, all that information, as well as name your channels. You can name each channel there. So I can say channel 1 is my boom 1, and make sure metadata is complete. That's one thing with location shoots. You want all the metadata as possible.
You're going to say something, Paul?
Yeah, the other thing that I'd say if you're doing field recording is to put the pre-roll buffer on.
Yeah.
Because there's always unpredictable things going on that you might want to capture.
No, absolutely. Next question. How long, before we go to the next question, how long is the pre-roll buffer? What's the
maximum of 10 seconds? Depends on sample rate. So 48K10, 96K5, 192K2.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Hazma Kajar in Cape Town, South Africa writes in Chris Fenwicks' setup, his setup includes Sound Desk. With my setup of MixPre Loopback and acquiring a Korg, do I still need Sound Desk?
Go ahead, Chris.
Hazmik, to be clear, you don't need any of this stuff. It's as huge.
Need is a big word.
Yeah, need is a giant word. This is. I was telling somebody, I think in the pre-show, that one of the things that I like about my Sound Desk setup is it gives me individual control per app, almost app type, browsers and media playback and stuff like that. And I use it all day long. It's so easy to just lift my hand. Here, I could show you on this picture here. Here's my mouse. And if I want to turn down Zoom, I don't hear you guys now. It's just that easy. If I want to turn up stuff, it's, do I need it? God, no, I don't need it. It sure is handy though.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
I think the incorporating Sound Desk into the pipeline is with at least how Chris was demonstrating to us last week and the week prior, is really more for if you're using your MixPre very extensively as your primary audio interface on your computer, like for what you're hearing and also what you're broadcasting out to the world. In a scenario where you are solely relying on the MixPre for your mixing capabilities and just putting out a program feed out, it's not that crucial, at least with how Chris demonstrated his setup.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway writes in, is the MixPre the panel's preferred audio interface mostly because of NoiseAssist, or does it have other advantages over a traditional interface?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I like that it has noise assist. Obviously, is one of the big selling points. Has a lot of gain on tap. It's very clean preamps, solid sounding preamps. I also like that it has physical buttons and it's easy to manipulate. I'm using the MixPre-6, so I have the nice star button, which gives me that access to solo mute.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I did use mine for a while, but because it's an old MixPre 1, I couldn't put Noise Assist on it. And I went to the Rodecaster Pro 2, which has fairly decent preamps, not quite as good as the Sound Devices, but it has much better headphone mixing. I was able to get a side tone easily into my ear and have a separate headphone output matrix for my speakers, et cetera, with 4 headphone outputs that you can program anything in and out. It makes it a lot more flexible for me. So my MixPre-3 is sidelined at the moment.
Yeah, and I will say that I kind of summarily filter out everything that doesn't have noise assist because I just can't, like, I need it I just use it all the time. But I will say that there's a lot of other things in the MixPre that I enjoy. All the routing and all the various controls and a lot of USB in and outs and so on and so forth are all things that I think are valuable. But as soon as I don't have some kind of noise assist and I don't consider most people's noise reduction tools to be useful. Like I turn them on and I'm like, okay, well, that's not it. So I think that is so I think that it's a mixture of both of those, but noise assist is definitely like table stakes for me. Next question.
Robert Choji in Los Angeles writes in, for the panelists, can you describe your MixPre workflow on location?
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, for our use case, we typically use a MixPre in a cart as a backup recorder, or in a bag in the van or truck, just in case we need to pull out a backup. In the cart, we set up the MixPre so that it takes timecode via the BNC input. This is a MixPre 10, so the timecode comes in via BNC. So we have timecode mode as BNC, and then when we go to the record menu, we can set the record trigger to start recording when the MixPre sees timecode coming in, and that's how we're able to automatically have a backup recording running.
That's great. Paul, thank you so much for your time, for joining our little panel here.
Pleasure. It's been really great to see you all, and here's to the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll drag you in a couple times. It's always really a pleasure to have you here. And thanks to the rest of the panel who just made this a great, it's just something I feel like we want to keep on injecting. The big advantage that we have is we have a persistent community, and a lot of us are using many of the same devices. And by having a session like this, more people know it, which means more people are answering questions in Discord, and more people are figuring out, and more people are asking more questions. Definitely keep on asking in Discord, as well as in our show, asking more MixPre questions, and we'll keep on making sure that you understand how those use, or other interfaces. We have a lot of interfaces that all of us use, but the idea is to keep injecting that knowledge back into the group, which means we can support new people as they come in. But thank you so much to the panel for all of your contribution. Thanks to all the producers. Ton of questions. Like, we didn't even get to we still left some on the field. We just couldn't get to all of them, but we really, just really, really great questions to drive the conversation forward. Really appreciate your contribution. Remember, you can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global, and then we throw them into the next day's general question bin and answer those. So go ahead and use that any time of the day. And thank you to the incredible team that makes this happen. This is definitely not, as you know, your vanilla Zoom. And then we have a lot of people out there that are developing software, configuring hardware, developing systems, managing who's going to show up, making sure people are ready to show up, and then actually cutting this show and managing all the questions, there's so much going on every single day, 7 days a week. We haven't missed a day since March 25th, 2020. So, and an incredible team on the back end that makes that happen. We traveled 94,000 miles answering all these questions today. That's what it would have taken for us if we were all in the same. If we were going to, we're going to go to Paul. Now we're going to go to Mickey and ask him. 94,000 miles. That's 152,000 kilometers, and that is 748 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Great having you, Paul. That's good.
Thanks, Paul. Very
Thanks,
cool.
Paul. Tell
What's
Matt
that
Anderson
USB
I said hi.
stick?
What was the USB stick? What's the brand?
MixPre-1, that's the ticket.
What was the USB stick? It was the Bluetooth.
Yeah, the dongle thing.
What's that
Bluetooth
called?
virtual keyboard adapter or something. Yeah.
Is that right, Paul? Oh,
Yeah, but a USB stick.
We'll find it.
Really?
We'll find it. Yeah, no, I'll ping Paul. All right.
Alex,
Ping
the
pong.
first thing I did when I got my MixPre-6 is I set it up so I could listen to my Mac in stereo. I'm shocked you're listening to your Mac in mono.
When I need to do it in stereo, I listen to it in stereo. When I want to listen to it, I have another
Well,
headphone
now that
jack
you
for
have
that.
2 extra inputs, if you upgrade your firmware, you can.
Yeah,
Just saying.
I could.
You'll have to go up.
You don't have to like
Well, it could go